Hi. In this module, what I want to do, or what I'm trying to do here, is help you become problem solvers, right? There are two parts to it. One, we need to look at problems, identify them, and then solve them. A lot of us are not tuned or not, they're not natural problem solvers or identifiers, right? So we need some sort of a guideline, or let's say some sort of a framework in which we can say, okay, this is a problem that we can go and solve, right? I'm going to share case studies relevant to problem solving, and then I will have certain points that I want to discuss vis-a-vis every case study. Let's go to the first case study, or as I call it, stories. Okay, the restaurant chaos solution. So Maria was a restaurant owner, and restaurant was a mess. Orders came out late or wrong, customers were angry, staff was consistently feeling burnt out. Trying to fix people didn't work. She tried everything. She tried to hire better people. She tried to do training, but the chaos was still there. And what was the real problem? The real problem was the system. She realized there was, she was treating the symptoms, but she was not really looking at the disease. The problem wasn't bad employees. People wanted to work. The problem was a bad system. There was no system. How would things flow from one place to the other, get solved, go back? So there was no particular system in place. The kitchen staff had to guess cooking sometimes. No one knew the right recipes at the right time. So there was a lot of this systemic chaos. So instead of blaming people, she started redesigning the system. She brought in digital order system, color coded tickets with different stations, standard prep times posted at each station, clear ownership, one person for one order from start to finish. Now, when she started thinking about these systems, she started solving the restaurant problems, right? The results after redesign. Same staff, completely different results. Order became accurate and fast, the stress dropped, customer satisfaction soared. Now, when the same problem keeps happening with different people, the problem is in the system, not the people. So fix the system and the people's problems will disappear. This is very important. Even when you're going out to identify or look for an idea in your ecosystem, look for problems that keep coming up again and again, right? These are very good problems to solve, right? Because these are systemic problems. There has to be a system put into place. Now, whether that system is scalable, people will pay you for that. Do you have an easier method to do it? Do you have a new way of to do it? These are things you will evaluate based on the last video I shared with you. We'll come back to this story later, but let's go to our mind map and see, what are the problems, or, what are these systemic problems? Let's understand them better. So most business problems are actually system problems. If you are someone who is going to solve business problems or B2B problems, look at system problems. What are these system problems? We heard about Maria's story. The problems repeat because systems are broken, not people. Design flaws create user problems. Fix the design, not blame the user, right? I'm going to give you a very simple example. Do you remember how suitcases were back in the 90s or early 2000? None of the suitcases had wheels. So you had to actually lift the suitcase and walk around, or you had to put it on your head or get a porter to do that for you. But this was a design problem. Now, the moment we have wheels on our bags, they are easier to drag, carry. You see everyone with better mobility now, right? And that problem has been solved. So if you want someone who is more product oriented in their approach and your core values, trends, mindset shift, all of that will kind of point you towards that, what kind of problem solver you are. Um, Look at these design flaws. A lot of these design flaws, once fixed, can improve the ecosystem completely. Customer complaints reveal process gaps and not customer issues. I'll give you a very simple input. Let's say you want to build a competing business to an existing business. Go look at the reviews. What are customers complaining about? What are customers happy about? And whatever customers are complaining about is the gap area. And that is a good problem to solve. And look at multiple competitors. So, for example, if you are someone who is kind of looking to build a service business and you are offering marketing services, right? Look at some of the local competitors and look at the Google reviews. What are people talking about? Are they talking about quality of service, effectivity, ROI? What are they talking about? And take those problems up first because you'll be able to attract customers better with those problems, with those solutions. Revenue problems often indicate marketing system issues. Now, let's say you are looking at, again, coming to the marketing example. If you're looking to build a marketing agency, look at current customers who are draining money in marketing, right? And not getting the results. And that becomes your gap area, right? So you need to look at these problems in a new light, right? You need to understand what are the gaps. Where can I come into picture and deliver a better service or a product? Team problems usually mean unclear processes. So internally also, when you start building a team, even before that, start thinking about processes. What do you want these people to do very clearly, right? Because you'll start hiring people, you'll start working on your idea, but you have problems like Maria has. The orders are not coming out on time, customers are complaining, and people are great, but there's something wrong. So these are system problems or process problems. Processes are not clear. Not everybody knows what they have to do in the system. Focus on creating systems that prevent problems from recurring. That's what we kind of saw. Right. So, existing problems, um, problems that need to be identified, and new problems. And and like I said, I've given you some inputs. If there's a revenue problem, look at marketing. If there is a team problem, look at processes. Right. So these kind of indicators help you identify what kind of problems these are and what kind of solutions we can offer. I'm going to go to the next story now. The Domino delivery discovery. So we all love Domino's, and this was the first few brands which were launched in India, which were delivering, um, you know, the product at your doorstep, right? And then many kind of followed. So Domino's was dying in the 1960s. Domino's pizza was failing. There were a lot of problems, cold pizza, slow service, losing money, staff turnover, marketing struggles, location issues. The one focusing question, instead of trying to fix everything, Tom Monaghan asked the focusing question. What is that one thing that we could do that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Now, this is the crux of building an MVP, right? What is that one thing you're going to go and solve, which is going to have a major impact on the customer? The bold answer. His answer seemed crazy, but he took this very different approach. He said, deliver hot pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. And we know this, this promise from Domino's. Now, the single focus solved multiple problems. It forced kitchen efficiency, So the team started looking into kitchen processes. Like, we spoke about that earlier. If it's a people problem, look at that. Required hot food system. So it's all the cold pizza problem. So they brought in hot food systems, a lot of machinery they use to kind of do this. Created clear customer promise, which solved marketing. Now, this is a very clear and very appealing promise. 30 minutes or it's free. And I think a lot of people have taken advantage of this also. And Domino's has not budged from their promise, right? So they've actually given it to you for free if it's, delivered 30 minutes or late. So lately they don't have this promise. But in the earlier years when we were exposed to this brand, this was the promise. Made location less critical. A lot of your e-commerce and your quick commerce guys are doing this, dark stores, right? But what they did was they also this was their thinking was very forward. So from their one location they would go and deliver, right? And then that made location very not such a big consideration. Otherwise, in the restaurant business, location is a very important aspect and give staff very clear mission, right? Solve engagement that you have to deliver, you have to take orders on time, you have to take clear orders, you have to upsell. You will always see upselling when you order on Domino's. If you get buy this, you get this free. So all of those things were carried out with one focus. By obsessing over one metric, delivery time, every other business problem got aligned. Right. So we've made a promise. We need to achieve this promise and let's align everything according to that. And I think that was a very good strategy. Most complex problems have one core issue. Find the dominoes that tips all of them. Right. So, uh, yeah, I think that particular stand kind of put everything into place. You fix that and everything else gets fixed. So let's look at some of the corresponding points um, vis-a-vis this. The one thing that solves everything else. Most entrepreneurs try to solve everything at once, and that becomes an operational challenge. Pick your battle very clearly. Take one focus thing, one thing that would matter to the customer the most. Now, if I look at the domino situation, if I deliver a pizza in 30 minutes, which is hot, what am I going to get? I'm going to get customer delight, right? If we focus our energies and look at and think like a customer for every problem, you will find your solution. Find the domino that tips. Usually the one thing is uncomfortable or requires new skill. And a lot of times, so with this decision that they took, they had to install or introduce a lot of processes. And you might say, how will I know that this is going to fix the problem? You may not, right? And this is your hypothesis. With every MVP that we do, we are checking some or the other hypothesis. Your idea may not land as is. But what you need to do is you need to build experiments around that idea with the focus that how can I delight my customer, solve their problem, and still make a profit, right? So you have to look at it from customer's perspective constantly. Put the customer in the center of all your decisions. One great customer avatar makes all the marketing decisions easier. And we are going to talk about customer interviews and avatars in our next module. But understanding bottom line is understanding your customer, getting the real avatar. And the real avatar is those customer scenarios match real problems and they're real scenarios. So next we're going to talk about constraints based, and all startups have some constraints, right? You saw how Airbnb started, and they had constraints. They thought they already failed. Uh, they thought they were not as big, but they took advantage of not being so big, right, to their favor. Um, and we're going to look at another story which talks about this, how constraints lead to more innovation. So the Twitter character revolution, we all know Twitter 140 characters was the limit. Twitter's original problem, when Twitter launched the 140 character limit, seemed like a huge disadvantage. People said there's no enough. What can we write? And this became a kind of a limitation for people who wanted to express a lot. But constraints sparked innovation. So they created mentions, they created hashtags, shortening of URLs, made content scannable, more digestible, and that created a unique voice, concise, punchy, and immediate. And that's what everybody loved about Twitter. So they took a constraint and they built a brilliant innovation out of it. Hashtags have come from Twitter, mentions have come from Twitter, you know so all of these big innovations have come from one constraint. The unexpected strength. What seemed like Twitter's biggest weakness became its biggest strength. The constraint didn't limit creativity, it channeled into breakthrough solutions. And Instagram, quite surprisingly, had a similar story. They started as something called Bourbon, a complex app with many features. So they started removing everything, and what was left was the Photos app, photo sharing. And that's the advantage. And we're living in the Instagram world. Nice. Yeah. So innovation happens in constraints, right? We don't need big budgets to innovate. We actually need better solutions to innovate. And budget constraints are actually good. They make you think harder on how you want to execute something. So when somebody in the startup ecosystem comes up with this excuse of budget, I sometimes don't buy it, right? So we need to look beyond our budget constraints and start thinking about innovations and how we can solve real customer problems. I'm going to go back to my mind map. So constraint-based innovation, we saw Twitter story, we saw the Instagram story briefly. Constraints force creative solutions. We all know that. Have you heard of this word called jugaad? You know, and jugaad, the word has come from the fact that innovation in constraints, right? And this is a very popular word, I think, across India, and it's a very Indian word because Indians traditionally have been short on cash or funds, and they've innovated things with whatever is around them in their environment and created solutions around it. Limited budget forces you to be more resourceful and efficient. I have a note here. Yeah. So if you, and this is something that we talked about in our rational thinking also, if you start separating the emotions out of the situation, emotion and facts, and not be judgmental of a situations based on your emotions, you will be able to see the way forward. Right? I may sound very preachy here, but this is something coming from my personal experience. Okay, let me give you a personal experience on this now. Back in 2016, we started Trabug. I started Trabug with two of my co-founders. And obviously, we didn't have a lot of money to spend. So I came with design and marketing thinking. My co-founders came with tech and customer success thinking, right? Now, in the marketing, what we did was that instead of spending a lot of money or waiting very long to get the validation on our idea, we started spending a little bit on ads, right, on Google Ads. And we started to see some success with it. So we got a few customers, we started servicing the customer, then we started interviewing the customer and saying, okay, how was the experience? What could have we done better? We are a startup. We really want to do this in the best possible way. And early on, we got some good testimonials. We could, get some good testimonials. Now, what I did was, I knew that there was one thing that I knew about this industry is that people do a lot of research when they have to travel. So they depend on blogs, they depend on real customer experiences to pick up services and places of interest. So I started searching uh, regarding bloggers that I could tie up with who could recommend our products. And the offer that we gave to them was the moment a product, the somebody buys our product, we'll give you a good commission, right? We gave 25, even 30% commission back then. But at that point, what we were thinking is the moment customer uses our service, we are confident of our service, it's good service, they will further recommend us more people, right? So the word of mouth became a very important selling point for us. And we worked on that. So while getting a very well known blogger to endorse us because they are genuine, um, they genuinely recommend good products. We had to demonstrate the product capabilities, which we did very successfully because it was a good product. And then we had to convince the blogger to work on a commission model, which they're not used to usually. They do work on affiliate models, but not with new people. So that is the barrier I had to crack. So chasing the bloggers, writing to them every day, answering all the detailed questions, and then assuring them that yes, we have a system in place and they would get their money on time. All of that happened because we didn't have a lot of money to spend, right? Otherwise, we could have just kept buying, placements from bloggers. They would have happily given us that, and that costs a lot. So we use these kind of methods in marketing to 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 put a brand where we wanted it to be. And surprisingly, that contributed to 25% of our sales, amongst other channels that we use. So constraints push you, you know. So don't see constraints as something as a roadblock, but see, okay, what can I do? I have this constraint, and what can I do in spite of having that? So yeah, small budgets often create more innovative solutions. I spoke about this. Root cause versus symptom, dig deeper to solve better. We're going to look at a story around this now. The hospital infection mystery. The alarming problem. Hospital had a serious problem. Post-surgery infections were rising, and they didn't know what was wrong uh, and what was the cause of it. The obvious solutions weren't working, so they used hand sanitizers, stricter procedures, additional training. All of that was being done, but they couldn't understand what was causing that problem. So looking deeper with the 5 whys, right? Anytime you want to evaluate your idea, look at your idea from a customer perspective and keep saying why will a customer buy from us, right? Why will they pay this much? Why will they do this? Why will they use my product? Why will they do XYZ? The more whys you ask, the better understanding you will get of the situation, and you'll be able to solve problems better. So use the 5 whys technique, and usually in 5 whys, you get your solution. So post-surgery infections were increasing. Why? Bacteria getting into surgical sites. Why? Contamination during surgery. Why? Something in the operating room environment. Why? Circulation patterns were wrong. Why? So when they started looking at the internal conditioning system, they saw that the bacteria was blowing not against, but in that direction of the where they were having their operations. So the root cause wasn't human error or dirty hands, it was airflow engineering. Now, if they hadn't done the why exercise, they wouldn't have discovered this problem. And they would have gone with the regular solutions that they were doing, sanitizing, fixing, having harder procedures, increasing compliance. So the simple but powerful fix, they fix the HVAC system, which and the infections dropped by 80%. If they kept treating the symptoms, more training, more sanitizer, they wouldn't have solved the real problem. So if you want to get to a real problem, start asking why. Keep asking why until you reach something fundamental. Surface solutions fix temporary, root cause solutions fix problems permanently. When you are going to offer a problem or offer a solution in the industry, they have to be permanent solutions, not temporary solutions. So the depth of the problem that you're going to solve for the customer is very important. Great. So I'm going to come to the Netflix story in a minute. So the root cause versus symptom, you have to dig deeper. There is a book by Don Normans, Look Beyond Surface Symptoms. Uh, I will recommend, this is part of the recommended books that I have, what's wrong with me? Recommended books that I've given to you. It's called Design of Everyday Things. And it kind of talks about how to look beyond the surface symptoms. Ask why. Surface problem is customers aren't buying, customers don't understand the value proposition. So that could be the root cause. So when you, in some of you might already being, they've launched their products, they're trying to figure out why is it not working, right? So ask these questions. And if you're not able to figure themselves out by yourself, please talk to your customers, right? And talk to them in the most empathetic way, not because you're taking feedback, but you're genuinely concerned about solving their problems and you're somebody who is genuinely concerned about your customer. Right. So I hope you're getting the objective that I have with this to make you better problem solver and to help you also identify problems that can be solved. Right. Um, Moving to the next story now. The Netflix recommendation paradox. We all love Netflix. I love Netflix. Two parts to recommendation. Netflix had two ways of recommending movies: sophisticated algorithms, analyzing, viewing data, and simple human intuition about what people might like. What algorithms got right? Early on, discovered something fascinating. Algorithms were great at predicting what people should like based on their history, but humans were better at predicting what people would like based on psychology. For example, algorithm would recommend serious dramas to someone who's watched documentaries because they would say, okay, dramas versus documentaries, some similarity. Okay, let me push documentaries or dramas to this guy. Humans, on the other hand, could take a different view. They say, okay, this guy's been watching too much heavy documentaries. Let me give a comic relief. Let me recommend some comedy to these guys, right? Netflix breakthrough was combining both algorithm process, massive data, systemic analysis, and human insight to understand emotional context. So that was Netflix's major breakthrough. And when to use what? The magic happened when they learned when to trust each approach. Use algorithms for pattern recognition in large data sets. Use human insight for emotional and psychological understanding. Combine both for breakthrough solutions. So, this is a very interesting example of how one can think of AI algorithms. If you are somebody who's solving a problem through AI, you need to introduce this kind of thinking to your algorithm, right? There is some factual thinking that AI can do. And how do you introduce emotional thinking in your algorithms, right? So use this example for that. Neither pure analysis nor pure intuition is sufficient. So obviously, see, humans can process very little data, right? And now we are training machines to understand this human psychology and process data. So not just simple data will work, and not just simple intuition will work. You will have to come up with the right balance of these two things. And you will see, and having worked in a dating app, so my last project was a dating app. I was actually, faced with this challenge, you know. So the browsing patterns would give us very different data than the compatibility patterns, right? And when we were building that, we didn't have access to building some AI technology. So that was a little expensive proposition for us, and we were running at a very low budget. And so we kept um, tweaking our algorithm with our newer understandings. But, and they were 80% factual driven and 20% intuition driven. And now, when I look back at that problem, and we have so many AI tools to help us, we could have made that algorithm so much better, you know. So, yeah, so, when you are faced with certain situations like this, look at a combination of both. So, cool. Let me go back. Balance gut instinct with systemic analysis. First impressions about customers market often accurate. So there is a lot of science between intuition also, but I wouldn't always recommend to depend on your intuition. Please look at data, analyze data, and then take an intuitive call on it, not before that. Trust your gut for direction and use analysis for execution is the best advice I can give you. Right. Best entrepreneurs combine both approaches strategically. This doesn't happen, like I said, this doesn't happen unless you've done certain experiments. So implement, you cannot just keep thinking about these things. You have to implement, look at the data, and then take a call. So starting up is 90% implementation and 10% thinking. Unless you implement, you don't have data. Unless you have data, you cannot think, right? So go and implement stuff. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next case study. The Southwest Airline 10-minute miracle. This case study is very important because a lot of airlines and low cost airlines or no frills airlines have used this as their North Star, right? And you would, once we go through the case study, you will actually see that how airlines have used this. Small improvements, big results, the Kaizen way. I've recommended you Kaizen earlier also. This is a great book. Please read it. It asks you to slow down and improve little by little every day, or in a consistent and sustainable way. Southwest Airlines revolutionized air travel with one big innovation, but with dozens of tiny improvements. The smart moves, the 10-minute miracle started small. Eliminated assigning seats, save 2 minutes per passenger. In today's time also, you would see that you are asked to buy a seat or pick a seat way before you come to the airport. Now this saves 2 minutes per customer at the counter. They stopped serving meals. You've seen this also. Saved 3 minutes of cleanup. Used secondary airports. Saved 5 minutes of taxi time. Standardized on plane types. Saved maintenance complexity. You would see Indigo has all the planes have the same layout. And the cleaning process then becomes standardized. You can standardize the cleaning process. Created faster boarding process, saved 8 minutes turnaround. Boarding starts way earlier. I think now starts 40 minutes before you board the flight. And that helps. Each improvement seemed insignificant, but the compound effect was revolutionary. They could turn planes around in 10 minutes versus the industry standard of 45 minutes. You can check this particular thing in Indigo as well. I'm not endorsing Indigo, but I'm just saying that most low cost airlines have streamlined their processes like this. Don't wait for a big idea. Now, here, as compared to what we saw in Domino's, they already had the big idea, which is a low cost airline, right? And from a customer perspective, easier to travel, cheaper to travel, easier way, cheaper way, right? And but when many low cost airlines are competing against each other, how do you stand out? Right. So on time becomes your biggest customer delight. So that's what a lot of airlines are now talking about, on time, on time. We are 10 minutes before time. We are 15 minutes before time. So all of these small improvements have contributed to a larger impact. Right? I don't have anything more to say, so I'm not going to go to the mind map. I'm going to straight away go to the next case study. Oh, there's no next case study. So, okay, let me then go to mine. Small solutions compound effect, right? Kaizen. PDCA cycle. Plan small, do quickly, check results, act on learning. This is the fundamental of building your MVP, right? Like I said, don't wait for miracles to happen. You have to work towards miracles to happen. And smaller, effective steps will compound and give you big results. So don't take up tasks or goals which are massive. Break them down into smaller things which you can do consistently. The more important thing is to do things consistently rather than to do big things, right? So focus on consistency and smaller improvements first. Fantastic. So yeah, in the next video, we'll get into the exercise. Hope you enjoyed this.